welcome back. What we're going to do now is we're going to do those 3 petals, but the first thing I want to do is, if you look at your photograph, reference photograph, there's a highlight right there. And it does separate out these 2 petals, and I don't have that in there. So I'm going to take my eradicator. If you're not familiar with what an eradicator is, it's just a little flat synthetic brush. It's actually also a Billy Joel and Billy Shoal. And you just gently get it, it always has to be wet, and you just gently rub that paint, wipe it with a clean paper towel. I'll get one of those right away. And you'll be shocked at how easy this comes off of here. You always want to wipe it in between. Otherwise you're just reapplying the paint. It's creating a line there, so I'm going to try to get rid of that line as well. But that does help separate those 2 petals. See how quickly, just by irritating that paint a little bit, how that just comes right up. And of course you want to use your paper towel, because that's going to actually remove a lot more paint for you without having to irritate the paper anymore, which is always a good thing. Now if you would irritate your paper, I'll show you how to fix it while we're talking about it. I'm just looking to see how far this highlight comes down. It comes down quite a ways. Right to about here. Excuse me. Allergy season, unfortunately. I think I'm worse in fall than I am in spring. And it seems to be a little thicker of a highlight than what I have, so I'm going to take some more off. Now I dried this with a hair dryer, and I did let it cool down. You don't ever want to work on warm paper. If you apply paint to warm paper, it's just going to absorb into that paper and give you a real hard time controlling it. So you want to let it cool down to the touch. That's important. It's getting that line in there, so I'm going to try to remove that as well. You always want your eradicator to be damp. You don't want it to be dripping wet, but you want it to be damp. I always have a habit of using the side of the brush. You really want to use just the tip of the brush, bristles, because that's what's going to move that paint for you. Just a little bit more down in this area. There, I'm happy with that. Now, clean my eradicator so the next time I need it doesn't have dried on paint in there. There we go. Now let's say that you had accidentally roughed up your paper. So I'm going to put down a clean paper towel. I cut mine into squares. I've done that ever since I oil painted, so I just kept on doing it. And I went to Walmart and I went to the floral department and I bought this whole bunch of smooth stones. I always have a habit of losing them, so I bought a whole bunch of them. They come in a little bag. People put them in the bottom of their vases to put their florals in, but we use them for this. And you could just take that smooth side of that stone, call it a smoothing stone, and you can rub that over the paper towel where you might have irritated your paper, and it is going to smooth it out. So that's a really good tip for you, just in case you would ever do that. I mean, I've done it, so you want to know how to fix it if you can. So let's go ahead and do these three. I think they're small enough. We only have to do one layer of water as a glaze. I think we'll be able to do all three at once here. Save ourselves some time. Kind of like a production line. I'm looking at the side of my paper to make sure I've got it covered. Years ago, when I first started painting in watercolors, I did a really lovely background on a leaf design. It was just strictly leaves. I was practicing leaves, and I didn't cover my paper as well as I should have. And I could see little tiny squares of white coming through, and I'm like, what in the world? And then it dawned on me, oh, you didn't have your water where you needed it completely. So it's always good to check the side of your watercolor paper and make sure that your area you're working on is completely covered. And then that won't happen to you. Alright, so let's get this little last guy in here. Just a little triangle in there. You can see I've got pencil marks in there as to where the darker values go. Now we're going to drop back down to the first value scale we were using. Add some water to my mixes here, so I've got enough to drop in. We're not going to need a whole ton, but some. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to pick up the first value, which is going to be our lightest. And we're going to just cover the whole areas on all three of those petals. Just like we did with the big petals. Same thing. Same process. I always got a grin. There's a woman out there that I bought some of her DVDs and never had the opportunity to take a class with her, but oh my gosh, she was a phenomenal still life artist. And she painted in oils, and she would say it's the exact same process. It's the exact same process. And she says how boring it is. It's the exact same. But she did some still lifes that you would knock your socks off. They're just unbelievably lovely. With apples and pumpkins and different things on a board, like a cupboard with a shelf on it. and they were just stunning. But she's right, a lot of the things we do are repetitive, but that tells me I want to become as good at those repetitive things as I can, because that's what's going to make your painting. Okay, so now I'm putting in my second value, and this one is right down at the bottom and right down in here and then back up. Same thing here, right down at this bottom. And then this one it's actually striped. So we're going to start there. But the better you can become at wet into wet, wet on dry, glazing, adding in your details, all of those things are very similar from painting to painting. So the better you can become at them, the better your paintings are going to be. I know that sounds like common sense, but you'd be surprised. The number of people that don't understand that. Almost this entire bottom is this value here. And it does come up over here. Just looking back at my reference photo, that's what's giving us all the information we need. And go down to the last one. Now this one's just got stripes. Easy enough. Okay, now we're going to pick up our darkest value. Some of this is just going to be reinforcing on a less of an area, of course. You don't want to cover up all that first value. I know I say that every time, but it's that important because you want your values. Now this is going into my background, so I'm just going to pick it up here before it gets really ugly. There we go. But yeah, the more repetitive I can be for you and tell you the important points, the better your paintings will be as well. That's a pretty small little area there. I'll reinforce this corner here again. There we go. And it's going to run into the background again. So we're going to let that dry and then we'll we can add in that corner one more time and get it to stay. Okay, I'm going to dry this because I don't want it to spread all over. Fix this up a little bit here. Make it look better. There we go. I think that's exactly what we were looking for. Now, while we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to do these stamen over here since we know we want them to be, and I'm going to do that as a glaze without any water down. So it's just going to be our straight number 4, blending and glazing medium and orange. And that's it. Wipe off my ferrule so I don't have a lot of. Now we're going to take a look at these ones over here are the lightest and right down there. So we're going to start there. Apply our glaze. And then once we finish that, we'll have everything covered, and that's when we want to take an eraser to everything. And get all the lines off before we get too much paint on it. If you wait too long and do another layer and glazes and so forth, then you're probably not going to get your pencil off of there. So you want to be sure and do that right after your first layer of paint is on everything. And everything is nice and dry. Make sure you can see me. It appears that you can. Move this up just a little bit more. Yep, this is a light one too back here. And I'm basically just filling in the area where the stamen is. And that comes down like that. Now this next one is also lighter in value. See how different that is than the things behind it? So that's exactly what we wanted, was this to pop out away from that background. This is perfect. And I think we're going to do all of the stamen in this color, and then the dark values will separate them out. There we go. All right, we're getting there. Slow but sure. And this separates it out from that back petal, all of that, so it's working really well to decide that we were going to do that with that value. Just using the very tip of my brush to fill in the small areas. Then as I come down, I can lay my brush down to fill in the wider area. If you're comfortable doing that, go right ahead. And then these little ends are going to be much darker. Almost like actually darker than the spots even. Now I felt that my orange was getting too dark, so I just added a little bit of water to it. Pulling it along that way. Now this one in the back is a little darker, so we'll add a little bit of pink to that one, or one of the other values we have on our palette. Trying to stay within the same color scheme. Since we're using a red-orange, why not, if we're going to do a lighter value like we are here, why not go to an orange? I mean, it's what's going to stay within the color scheme. It's going to blend in well with the design. I know when I painted in oils, there were people that taught we would always paint our backgrounds, whether it be an acrylic background that we started with or an oil background. We could do either or. I did both times. But some of them would set aside the mixture of the oil color that they used in the background and add it in to the mixture of every other value that they created for the other things in their design. And it really, if you think about it, gave a very nice cohesive design with that background color in every single item. Now you can't do that all the time, but with the designs that you can, it's not a bad way to go, because it makes it so cohesive then. Ties everything together. And that's important. You don't want to have a beautiful color theory going on and then all of a sudden have one color that doesn't jive with the color scheme that you've decided to use, because it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. Okay, so I dropped my tool. I'll grab another one. There, we've got those filled in. Now this one I'm going to add a little bit of the red to, because I want it to be darker and push it back a little bit further. So we're just going to do the same thing. See how it just set it right behind the one that's in front of it? That's what you want. Darker values recede, lighter values come forward. I'm just making sure I'm covering the whole stamen. It's kind of funny because now these white things that are left here almost has a pink contrast to them. It's really rather odd. Must be my lighting in here or something. I have a huge diffused light that I use so I don't get shadows. But that can give you a funny value every now and again, and this one it is. It's making it look pink, even though I know that white paper is not pink. Alright, and I'm going to fill in this edge too. We'll darken it after it's dry. That's what we're going to do to the rest of the stamen. I'm going to dry everything again, and then I'm going to stay away from that left-hand side because that's the lightest. This actually goes right down the center, the dark value. And I'm going to clean my brush. wipe it off a little bit and just pick up some lemon yellow and run it right down this side, and we'll do it right down the other side as well. And the paint will mix because it's still wet, which is a good thing. Got our yellow-green value in there that we wanted. And it ties into the background as well. And doesn't look disjointed, but we'll add some more darks to it and so forth. Okay, now I'm going to dry those two, and I'll be right back with you. Back. I got everything nice and dry and cool to the touch. This is the stem. I don't know if you got to see me do the stem as much as I would have liked, but all I did was the dark value down the middle and the lighter value of the lemon yellow on each side of it. And I'm going to put a glaze on the front of this last petal. Glaze of water. We'll do 2. If it's large enough, we can do 2. Okay, I'm going to lift this up so we can see. Where we're dry and where we need water. Okay, I'm going to let that set in for a minute. While it sets in, create just a little bit more paint. This is our last petal, so we don't need a ton. There we go. Basically just added water to what we had. And I know I get a lot of questions where people say, well, now it's all mixed different. The values are all different. Well, you know what? That's what makes it realistic. Value, oh, I'm using my water brush, I don't want to do that. Values change from petal to petal. That's the easiest way to make them change, is to mix as you go rather than all at one time. Backgrounds, I like to have a mixture. Because they're large enough that you want them to be somewhat cohesive in value. But with petals like this, blending or mixing as you go is definitely the way to do it. Because then your values do change a little bit. You're not going to do them or mix them the same each and every time. It'd be almost impossible unless you did a whole little jar of them like I did with the background. And even then with the background, you don't want it to be identical. You want it to be darker, closer to the flower and all of that. I didn't put my second glaze of water on there, and I could tell. It's not moving as much as I like it to, but we'll be alright. Have to refill my brush more often that way. Okay, so we got our first value laid in. I'm just checking the side to make sure we got it where we want it. Looks like we do. Okay, now we're going to pick up our mid value. And that is almost right in this area down here. Now it's a little bit lighter in there, so you want to skip over that area if you can. And then you don't have to pull out any highlights because it'll be automatically done. Just reinforcing it where I think it needs it. Okay, now to add a little bit more red to this next mixture because I kind of lost some of that color. This is our darkest value for right now. These lines down the center and so forth are what's creating the separation of the petals. Okay. I'm going to dry that. Can actually get a little bit more out here.